Shabbat Shalom. It is good to be together again, especially as we are moving closer and closer into this final preparatory time for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the Yamim Noraim, and not just because it is a spiritual high point of the year, but also because we are going through Moses' great speeches to the people of Israel during the book of Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy. And in this particular parasha of Ekev, he again reminds the people of the great blessing that God is giving them. Not just the blessing of Torah, not the blessing of God's protection, not the blessing of God's guidance, but the actual physical blessing that he is giving them of Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. And Moses uses the phrase that has been repeated many times throughout the Torah and continues to resonate within us, that it is Eretz Zavach Halav Udvash, that it is a land flowing with milk and honey. And this beautiful metaphor for the richness, the sweetness of the land has continued to inspire art and poetry and literature throughout the last few thousand years as a captivating metaphor for a land that is simply overflowing with this goodness available to its citizens. But there is a joke that goes along with this, where it became popular in the 1960s, I believe, in the land of Israel, in the modern state of Israel, where God goes to Moses and says, I am going to bring you into a land. And Moses says, that's great, because living out here in the Sinai, not so great. And God says, don't worry, it is a land that is flowing with milk. And Moses went, milk? Okay, yes, I guess milk is nice. Sure. And it's flowing with honey. A little sticky, but again, it's sweet. No, that's it. Milk, honey. What about the oil? Why do all the other countries in the Middle East get oil, but Israel only gets milk and honey? Well, there are some good reasons for this. First of all, it is not only oil that Israel is poor in. Israel has, major mineral deposits. You will not find gold mines and silver mines throughout the country. It is not rich in gemstones, no sapphire, ruby, or diamond mines throughout Israel. Instead, it is known for milk and honey and the other produce that it produces. The wheat and the grains of all types, the fruits that grow there in abundance and sweetness. But when it comes to cold, hard cash, Israel does not seem to have been blessed the way many other nations around the earth have been blessed. But I believe that this was not accidental. After all, with God, there are no accidents. If God had wanted us to have diamonds, we would have had a diamond mine. If God had wanted us to have oil wells, we would have had oil. But the relationship between a nation and its land, when its blessing comes in the form of its produce or in terms of its mineral wealth, is very, very different. Those lands that are blessed with mineral wealth, their relationship to their land is one of extraction. Mineral wealth is a consumable resource, lying there, waiting only for you to wring it from the land and cash it in. But of course, to cash it in, you need someone to sell it to. Mineral wealth is something that doesn't do much for you by itself. A stack of gold is rather worthless unless you have somebody who is willing to pay you for the stack of gold in some form of currency or exchange that you would be happy to enjoy. And thus, it creates a necessary burden of relationship outside your country, or, as often has happened throughout both history and current events, those countries that have been solely dependent upon their mineral wealth have found that the benefits, the blessings of that mineral extraction often will accrue, will pool in the hands of only a few. Because if it needs to be consumed, then those who have access to it will be able to find the buyers, and that blessing will come to them and them alone. But for those lands that are blessed with a richness of soil, a richness of produce, a richness of the groves and the fields, there is a very different relationship between the people and the land. It is one of partnership, of the people working the land, so the land will produce for them, in an ongoing relationship, not of extraction, but of cultivation. of development, of continued stewardship to ensure that the land will be able to give its blessings for not only this generation, but the next, and the next. And in that partnership, of course, is manifested our relationship with God, that we are engaged in the act of creation and the act of stewardship of God's land in order to receive the blessing rather than simply allowing the pumps to pump in the background. Of course, the blessing of a land has another very important end product, which is that it is something that is immediately a blessing to the human body, something that is immediately able to bring us joy and relief. As much as oil, diamonds, gold is a beautiful thing to have if you can get it, a person who has food but no gold may be considered poor. But a person who has gold but no food will be considered dead. The blessing that God gave us in the land of Israel is one that can sustain us for all time. With or without the other riches the world has to offer, we will always be able to continue to survive and thrive with just the blessing of the land that God has given to us, if we allow ourselves to be guided by God's teachings and ensure that we are fair and good stewards to the land and protect it for ourselves and for future generations, to ensure the land can rest, that the land can heal, and that the land remains everlastingly protected from any degradation. It doesn't hurt to be able to have a little cash on top of that. But if I ever have to choose between my food or my gold, food will always take top prize. Shabbat Shalom.